Hi, I'm Renee. This is Renee Genet. And today I want to talk about taking my power back with my money. You see, the second week that I was in France in September, it was September of 2024 at that point, and I had set up several meetings with a French tax advisor, a US tax advisor, a business attorney, an accountant, several accountants. And after an entire week of almost daily meetings with professionals, I felt so overwhelmed. Some of them were contradicting each other. Clearly, all of them knew like their lane specifically, but nobody knew like how everything fit together. And in that moment of overwhelm, I realized that I was the only one who was going to be able to provide all of that connectivity to make sure that I had a team of professionals and had all of the information that I knew to make that I would need to know to make the most informed and best decisions possible. And I was going to have to figure all of that out by myself. It was overwhelming. And it just exposed this story about how I've had this repeated pattern of feeling out of power. I'm feeling powerless when it comes to my money. So let me tell you more, because this is just where the story starts. So in 2020, I attempted a new chapter with my money. I got a recommendation for a good advisor from a trusted friend who I know is very good with her money. And I met with that person and I'm like, I am looking to be an active participant in this. I want to be informed. I want to know how much I'm paying you. I want to know that you're working for me and not for whatever company is selling whatever you're selling to me. That's not the kind of arrangement that I wanted. And the conversation was very good. And she's like, yep, 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 we can do that kind of an arrangement. And then afterward, she sent me a 105-page client agreement. I would have needed a lawyer to understand everything in it. And I remember trying to read down through the first few pages and just thinking, okay, like, do you trust this person? I did at that time. And so I signed the agreement and no invoice for service fees ever came. And a few months later, I remember sending an email saying, like, I haven't received an invoice from you. Like, how do we pay you? And she's like, oh, it came off your statement. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because again, I'm thinking that I know the fees that we were talking about and how this would work. And I, at the time, I didn't go any further with it. And, you know, and then, um, and then as I told her I was moving to France, and she, in the first year, when I first told her I was going, her response was, oh, great. Enjoy your year in France. She actually sent me a book on Provence and she's like, have a great time. And, we'll talk about where you're at then next year after you spend this year in France. And it was like she wasn't hearing me, because even before I came, I'm like, I'm going for forever. as long as France will allow me to stay. And so, fine, I let that go. We get to year two, and we have our annual half an hour call. And I'm like, you know, my plan's out of date. We need to make adjustments here. It's still based on me living in San Diego. It's not reflecting my situation living abroad. And she's like, oh, yeah, we'll update it. I'll get it updated and get it over to you. And it didn't happen. And as if you've followed these last few videos, you know that in 2026, I chose living in my power, or the word powerful, as my word for the year. And I knew in doing that that I was going to need to address this situation of living in my power with my money. So coming into this year, and I've got this advisor, and she's kind of keeping it on the down low that I'm living in France, and that situation feels risky. If the brokerage finds out, then they could close my accounts or limit the activity on them. And it just wasn't the situation that I wanted to be in. And I just had felt over time on multiple occasions where we had this pattern again of her hearing me and then basically doing what she wanted to do and not what I had asked to have done. So coming into this year, I pulled my statements out, I did my homework, only to find out that I'm in like one of the highest fee structures that is seen out in the industry. A crazy amount of fees that I'm paying. And we've kind of gotten so, like, when we started, I would meet with her twice a year. Now we're down to once a year, and that once a year we're not even doing what I'm asking. So I saw that, and then I was pulling my documents together to get my taxes ready, and I noticed I had capital gains to declare on my taxes. I didn't even know. And I didn't know that trades had been made that would trigger capital gains. It would have been great to know that. Not that they're significant. I'm not worried about them, but it would have been good to know. And it was between the fees and the capital gains and the being ignored, it's time for a change. It is time for me to take my power back. So, with the word powerful as my focus for 2026, it was my intention to become powerful in every area of my life, to live from a place of my own empowered sovereign self. So I needed to do this with my financial life. And that had to start with my own education and figuring out what questions did I need to answer. What did I need to know about any one particular advisor or any one particular professional, because I needed to create a team of professionals who could support me in my life as it is here in France. I have US tax implications, I have French tax implications. I own a French corporation, a corporate entity here in France. And, all of that comes with a large degree of complication. And I needed people who understood and were very good at their lane, but I also needed people who could show up and be a part of a functioning team so we could compare notes and bring this picture together to make sure that everything was fitting. Um, it wasn't going to help me if I didn't have people who were not willing to talk to each other and navigate through the complex decisions and interpretations of tax treaties and tax law. Um, so I needed to be able to take a leadership role in building this team and taking my power back around my money. So I started doing the work. One thing I learned in this process as I began to evaluate new financial advisors, often they'll have you take a risk assessment to determine like how you think about risk. And those quizzes, was scoring very, very low on. Like I was so risk adverse. But what I realized when I was sitting with that and thinking about it, like how true is that really? It wasn't that I was adverse to volatility. I was adverse to volatility I couldn't see, I couldn't understand, and I couldn't be an active participant in managing. I was adverse to powerlessness. There's a profound difference in volatility that you can understand and be a part of versus something you can't. So, my apparent risk aversion really had nothing to do with my personality and everything to do with the poor relationship that I had with my current advisor and the fact that I needed to own my own power in my financial life. And that risk assessment drives how your finances perform. So even that needed to change. So, yes, this story is set in France and it involves cross border tax complexity. But the real story is not about any of that. It's about what happens when you stop being a passenger in your own financial life and you take the wheel for yourself. It's about recognizing feeling, that feeling of confused and powerlessness about money is not something that's inevitable. It's not something that you just have to deal with. It's something you can change. It's often the result of being in the wrong relationship with the wrong advisor. And it's about the particular experience of a lot of women who've been talked over, managed, or kept in the dark. And what becomes possible when you refuse to accept that as inevitable. I want to close with some questions for you to ponder. Where in your financial life are you a passenger rather than a driver? What questions have you been afraid to ask your advisors? Or what questions, when they do answer your question, are you afraid to say you don't understand the answer and you need them to explain further? What would it feel like to understand your own money well enough to trust the decisions that you make with it? How would that feel? Okay, and with the winds of Provence deciding to kick up right now, I will leave it here. I wish you well. A bientôt.